We have our main story poses. Now we can go in between them, looking at the motion that our character is having, fixing it if needed, and adding some overlap and follow through to it. So the first thing we need to do is select all the controls, go to the graph editor, and hit this button to create auto tangents and spline our curves. We also need to go to the Settings, Animation tab, and change our default out tangent back to auto ease. Hit Save. After that, we can check the motion that our character is having. It's a good start, but the motion is pretty linear. We need to add some overlap and to fix the motion to be following the path, which is more reminiscent of an arc rather than a straight line, so that it feels more flowy and organic. Because currently we're letting Maya do all the calculation between poses, and that's why it feels mechanical. At the beginning we have a hold, so we don't need to do anything here. But from frame 8 to 12, we need to add some rotation to the chest so that it's not going straight down, but creates a more curved motion. We also see that our hands get inside the leg mesh, so we need to fix their position as well. We know that our hips are going in as well as the chest and the head, and they are all doing that at the same time, so we need to add some overlap. We can bring the chest a little bit back to slow down its motion, as well as the head, since the head should be even further behind. Just as with the weed principle, the hips of our character are the part leading the motion. That's why we need to slow down our chest movement before reaching the pose on frame 12. We don't want it to be changing direction, but we want it to be favoring the first pose rather than the upcoming one. That way our chest will start rotating in later than the hips. Our head needs to be even further behind this motion. That's why its curve in the graph editor even goes to the opposite direction before reaching its anticipation pose. Now we need to fix the arm position. Just bring them to the front using rotation X. Okay, let's check the current motion. We can move on to the next section between frames 12 and 16. This part is probably the most important one, because we have a very extreme and quite sudden change of pose, so we need to make sure that everything is going the right way. We can start with the hips. Currently they just go from one side to the other, and we want them to create an arc movement. But because all its rotations are changing at the same time, we have a quite linear movement. On frame 14, we can bring our hips in, favoring the previous pose. So go to the graph editor and check the rotation Z curve, and if needed, bring its key closer to the previous one. Meanwhile, the rotation Y can be favoring the upcoming pose. Rotation X we can keep closer to the anticipation pose. By doing these changes in different rotation channels, we create a curved motion of our hips. Let's move on to the chest. With the chest, we need to do a similar thing. So on frame 14, we can rotate it to the left a bit and hold it in its down position lower. Let's look at the curves. I want to bring this key closer to the previous one. Rotation Y looks fine. Rotation Z I want to bring even lower. Actually, we can even lower down the rotation Y value. Now we have our chest going in sort of this shape. Now the head, again very similar to what we did with the chest. We want to slow down our head turn and bring it lower and closer to the left. Okay, this curve looks fine. Rotation Y goes a bit too low, so I'll bring it up. Here, the part that we've been working in the rotation X channel looks fine, but the previous not. I don't like that it goes down, then up, then down again. So I'll bring these keys lower so that our curve continues to go this way. Actually, now that I scrubbed the animation, I do want to go back to the way it was. And in the rotation Y channel, I want to favor the upcoming pose and bring this key up. We can bring the rotation X closer to the upcoming pose as well. Because we want to have some more overlapping action, we need to select all the controls at the top. Never mind, first let's select just the chest control and move the keyframe from frame 16 to 17, so it arrives later to its overshoot pose than the hips. Then we can select the rest of the upper controls and move both keyframes 14 and 16 a frame later, and then the last one of those two move one frame further to frame 18. So now the very top parts of the body arrive even later. Okay, let's move on one section further and start in betweening the frames 16 to 22. Our hips just have a small settle, which is a simple movement, so we can leave it as it is right now, and perhaps just add a key on the rotation Z curve and make our hips come down faster by favoring the pose which is on frame 22. Make sure that you don't have a linear curve at the end, so you can bring the last key a little bit up so that the curve continues to go that way. Here on the rotation Y channel, the curve is going down, so we can lower the last key. In the rotation X channel, we can add a key and favor a previous pose so that not all the rotations would be happening at the same time. Lower the last key here as well. Now the rotation Z will happen quicker than the rotation X. Before going to settle, we want to hold our chest back for longer so that it would go down later than the hips. So we can bring that key even higher. Meanwhile, the rotation Y could be happening sooner, so we can lower this key down. Here, we don't want to have a linear curve. That's why I will lower this key a little bit and bring the last one up. Check all the channels for that. The head will do a similar thing to the chest. We want it to hold at the back longer, so rotate the Z to the back. We can bring the rotation Y down, so it first starts rotating to the side and then comes down. I totally forgot that we didn't fix the arms in the previous frames. So between the frames 12 and 18, on frame 15, we need to create a different pose for the arms. I know that because, as I've said, I created a reference video, so I can look that up. For all the other parts of the body, you can guess their movement, but the arms have a more complex path of action, and they go over extreme changes in their pose, so it would be hard to guess their motion. So from the reference, I know that the arms need to be bent and lowered down a little bit. This one can go higher. Hands, because they're overlapping, need to stay behind, so we need to rotate them to the back. Don't forget to look from all the angles. Check to see if you're not breaking any joints unnaturally. We should bend the fingers as well. Okay, the pose should look something like that. So the arms start rotating in, then the elbows bend as the shoulders are bringing the arm up. The hands are left behind a few frames so they keep bending down until we get our arms at the top, and then everything flips. The pose which we currently have on frame 18, we do want that pose, but we want our hands to arrive at the top even later. So select all the controls that belong to our arms and copy this pose. Even better, select the keyframes on frame 18 and 22 and move them 2 frames later. So now we have the straight arms overshooting on frame 20 and then settling on frame 24. And we have some space before these poses to create another in between. On frame 18, we can hit the S to save a pose of our arms and then do a few fixes. We need to spread them a little wider to the sides and bring them more to the front. Bend the elbows more and reposition the hands to be facing the way the arms were coming from. Bring the fingers in because the hands are still behind a few frames. The shoulders reach first their position at the top, then the elbows, and only then hands and fingers. We have moved the keyframes of our arms, and we also need to change the timing of our head. So shift-select the keys between frames 18 to 22 and move them 1 frame later. That way our chest arrives to its settle pose on frame 22, the head a frame later, and the arms a frame after the head. Also, because we don't want both our hands to have the same timing, we can select one of the hand controls and bring their keyframes a frame back. I think we're mostly done in betweening. So in the next lesson, we'll go over our curves in the graph editor and check for all the small details that need to be fixed. For example, here I see that we need to fix the foot because there are some frames when it's no longer touching the ground. And we'll do our final cleanup.